That leads into our second skill, which is powerful questions. I would say that powerful questions is kind of bred through everything that we're doing as a coach. Because as a coach, we start at a question, not a solution. We don't start at a solution in coaching. In coaching, we just assume that there's more information to know. So they could have talked for 3 full minutes. And when they finish that long thing, I'm going to come back with a question. Okay. A powerful question is concise, open-ended, and it invites the participant to explore their values, tap into their inner guidance, and foster self-reflection. Its purpose is to encourage dialogue and learning without leading the participant toward a predetermined answer, opening the conversation to curiosity and exploration. Okay. A powerful question is a powerful question because it causes them to look inward and really consider an answer. There are two types of questions that I talk about a lot. There's a one-way street question where the only one who's learning something new is the person asking the question. And then there are interstate questions that are going to connect this thing to another area of that person's life. Okay. It causes them to go, I never thought about that. Let me consider that. Because a powerful question is there to lift up a value that you have. A powerful question is there to ask you to ponder more deeply about something that you're doing or you would like to do. So what are the elements of a powerful question? I'm glad you asked. A powerful question needs to be short and simple, 10 words or less. Anybody a long question asker? Have you ever been asked a really long question? Maybe you've been in an interview and they're asking you the question and you're sitting in the interview going, oh my gosh, what am I supposed to answer? That's a lot for a person to hold. And so coaches get really, really good, and people who are collaborating get really, really good at being short and simple with the question. Maybe there's some context that you give, and then you say, boom, here's my question, 10 words or less. Not a hard and fast rule. If you go to 12 words, nobody's going to come out and, give you a citation for it or anything. But as a general rule, try to keep it at about 10 words or less. The other thing is that they are open-ended. So they start with who, where, what, when, how. Okay. We're opening it up for them because we don't want the question to lead them, to one or the other. Because maybe that's my one or the other, but there's another and another and another and another and another that they could come up with. And so we have these open-ended questions. Now, we like to say that you should use why with caution and be aware of a judgmental tone. Because even though you might not mean it like that, it could be heard, why? I'm a grown up. Why? Because I felt like it. Why? Because I pay my bills, right? It can bring up a person's defensive nature if you don't really put some love on why. And so I like to use things like, I'm curious why. I like to know more about why you decided to do it this way. Okay. Amber also, and Amber, feel free to jump in with this. Amber also offers, when we're using powerful questions, that she likes to just jump in and say, I'm asking these questions because this thing. Sometimes there's paperwork we need to complete. There's information that we need that is personal, private. It's kind of getting into person's business and mix. And so Amber, one of the things that she uses is to just jump out there and say, like, I'm not asking these questions because I want to know. I'm asking these questions because this is what we need to know for this form. Yeah. Okay. And getting it off of you. And so those powerful questions that we're asking is not just, did you get sleep last night? Great question. Open-ended, but not necessarily powerful, because the answer is yes or no. Sometimes you need those yes or no questions. Sometimes you need to ask a yes or no question to determine which way I go in the powerful question. But we don't want to have a conversation full of closed-ended questions. Closed-ended questions don't allow for exploration. They don't allow for curiosity. They don't allow for creativity. And in coaching and collaboration, we are looking for creative solutions. We're looking to create the environment that makes change possible. And we can't get there if we're only asking those close-ended questions. Okay. The other thing is these questions don't presume to know the answer or lead the participant toward a particular answer. I've been guilty of that. Being in a session with someone and knowing these are the programs that I have. So I'm going to ask you questions that are going to lead you to picking one of these programs that I have because I want to be helpful to you. Okay. And that can get tricky sometimes. And so we need to make sure that we're not asking questions from a vantage point of, I know what they're going to say already. Okay. I wrote something down the other day. I wrote on my sticky note. I have a wall of sticky notes if you're wondering what I'm looking at. One of the things that I wrote down is the joy of opening a book and realizing that it is a totally different story than what's on the cover. That's what we're looking for in these conversations. Sometimes you can look at the book and you can say, hey, it says 1,000 ways to make $1 million. I kind of think I know what that book is about. But sometimes it's a picture of a waterfall and all of this stuff. And you open up the book and you discover that it's something completely different. That's what coaching is about. That's the joy of it. And using these powerful questions is what's going to help you turn the page of the book, or i.e. the person that's sitting in front of you. Okay. And so we don't want to presume that we know the answer. We want to go on a fact-finding mission. We want to get curious with them and find out, well, what is this all about? What else is there to know? Okay. It opens us to curiosity and exploration. It also seeks to understand the participants' core values. That gets to the mindset that we talked about last week. Mindset am I working with? What are the things that they actually believe about what they can experience? What are the values that they hold? What are the attitudes that they hold? Not to judge it as right or wrong or good or bad, but it gives me more information in how I navigate the work that we'll do together. So the powerful question is there to help lift up something to them, bring something to their attention, raise their level of awareness about something. And then it invokes introspective curiosity within the participant about themselves and their desires. When we're working with folks who are under economic strain, particularly, there is often not a lot of space for introspective curiosity. Why? Because they're in survival mode. I'm just trying to get the next thing that can move me onto the, when our executive function skills are strained, we don't have the space for internal curiosity, introspection. And so when we're asking these powerful questions, when I know I've asked a really good, powerful question, I know that I've asked a powerful question when someone says, let me think about that for a second. And then as a coach, I encourage them, you don't have to answer right now. Let's talk about it at the next session. And then I move on to the next thing. Because we're not therapists and no one's asking you to be a therapist, a counselor or anything like that. But we are asking you to be willing to give someone else the space to consider what's important to them. And one of the best ways to do that is a powerful question. Yeah, it's more collaborative. It's a reason why for the last however long, my whole life, I've heard 2 heads are better than 1. There is a perspective that the player has that the coach doesn't have. And there's a perspective that the coach has that the player doesn't have. It blew my mind just using football, and then I'll move us on. It blew my mind in football when I realized in high school that there was a person up in the box with a microphone and they were looking down on the field because they had a completely different perspective than even the head coach that was on the, sideline. And it was just like, oh, I'm like, why isn't that cheating? But when we understand and value the perspectives of everyone who's involved in this, then we can benefit from it. But when we're intimidated by it because we're in a fixing mindset or an expert mindset, I'm an expert, we don't get the benefit of the other perspectives. And so it's really about how can I get the most of all of the perspectives around me to help us get to the finish line, and work smarter, not harder. Oh yeah. Oh, that was a hit right there. I saw the heads go. Oh yeah, smarter, not harder. I'm over hard work. I think the pandemic taught me that lesson. I was like, listen, I want to work smart. And the smartest way to work is to collaborate. That is the smartest way to work. Is to pool our energy and resources to work together to get there.